Hi, everyone, and welcome to Life Unpotted. We're happy to have you here. And Sophie and I, just before hopping on the mics, we were kind of like, what do we talk about? And we always make a point to try to connect with ourselves before podcasting because we don't need to go in knowing what we're going to talk about. The point is to show a conversation where you're existing in, not thinking about, and just existing in a state of love, existing in a state of being, because that's the greatest place to be. That's where we can all be. We can all tap into that through ourselves, within ourselves. And that's the topic that we want to go in the direction of today, is exactly that, of how to enjoy our experience, how to enjoy every moment in a deep and connected way. And I think in order to do that, we have to connect to ourselves. And the reality of that is just connecting with yourselves isn't just fun and exciting and full of love and full of joy. There's also a level when you connect with yourself, darkness, pain, deep stuff. But once we allow ourselves to go into that direction, and my God, it takes time, that's what allows us to come back to ourselves and realize that we've always been whole no matter what. So I look forward to this conversation on connection. And on that note, I want to read you guys a poem that I wrote, and it'll set the tone for the rest of the conversation. I don't have to hide my pain. I can wear it on my sleeve and let it connect me to others as a symbol of truth, love, and wholeness. A reminder to others that they too can be loved, as I remind myself that I too am not alone, and we can all walk in harmony, arms linked with one another, and share love with everyone we pass. So this was something I wrote after I did a Tara Brach rain meditation, where the whole point is to deeply connect with yourself, deeply connect with parts of yourself, and give yourself love in those parts. And it's a really powerful practice, and it brought me back to feeling how I want to exist, how I want to live, and how we can all exist in this level of wholeness. It just takes us being able or being willing to go to those dark places. And it doesn't always just happen right away. It takes years sometimes to go to those places. And I just so feel like I'm in a place right now where I'm allowing myself to go to those dark places and also be there for myself. And that's really what that poem was about. It was about finding the love in yourself and being a friend for yourself. And when you can do that, you can find love everywhere.
What do you think, or what have you seen in your life to be like the main difference of what it looks like to be there for yourself and to not be there for yourself? Because I think that's one that we may not know when we're existing in a state. So I'm curious, like from your experience, from your reflection the past few days, what in terms of your daily life, maybe your daily routine, how you've been showing up, has there been a shift in that?
So there's this story, or there's this quote in the Zen Buddhist world where they talk about the greatest thing you can ever do for yourself is to not leave yourself. Tara Brach has this saying in her meditations of, I am here and I'm not leaving. And that has really resonated with me. The way that I can best describe it in my experience is that it's so easy to work against yourself. It's so easy for someone to get mad at you and for you to get mad at yourself. It's so easy for you to trade on yourself, to actively be agreeing with everyone that you're wrong and you're bad and you're horrible. And it's really hard to go through life that way. And I think if we all take a look and examine our life, there could be moments, and maybe it's just really common for me, but I do think it is common in life to have these experiences where we trade on ourselves, we abandon ourselves, and that's it. And I think what the shift for me has been that I haven't been abandoning myself in these deep states of being open. I haven't allowed myself to leave. I've stayed with myself through the discomfort and the pain, and I've seen myself become more capable of loving that version of me and protecting that version of me in a really authentic way. I think I've tried to force these things in the past, but I think it's really slowing down, because sometimes we can try to quote unquote heal or fix ourselves out of anxiety and trying to do the things that we think we should be doing. And something I came across recently, I've been doing a lot of meditations, but Tara Brach specifically, because they really are such an amazing resource to go into a compassionate place with yourself. So not all meditations are the same. But something I realized from that is that I have all this energy in me, and I have been wearing headphones, and I've just been like dancing with myself and shaking it off and like really connecting. And I've never allowed myself to dance freely. So I think it comes in ways that are natural when you don't try to be a certain way, because when you recognize that you are unique from everyone else, you have unique experience from everyone else, that you have to show up for yourself in that way and not wish it away or wish that you were someone else or wish that the pain wasn't yours, because, you know, whatever it is. And in order to alleviate it, I think you have to show up for yourself. And that experience looks different for everyone. I just have seen it in my experience of it's a commitment of, it almost feels like showing up for yourself every single day and not running from yourself.
Well, it's like, it's so nuanced, because if you were to explain what it meant to show up to myself, like 4 years ago when I was getting up every day, going to work, in the grind, all my intention and all my focus was on dating, obsessing with other people, obsessing with getting a promotion. It reminds me of the Casey Musgraves song, Deeper Well. I've been listening to that on repeat the past few days, and she talks about like this reflection she's having of, you know, I used to wake up every day and get high and hit the gravity bong, or I used to put all my energy into people who no longer serve me. And now she says, I've found a deeper well. And it's funny because I was reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, and I saw him referencing that too, which I mentioned to you yesterday, of like this concept of a deeper well. And it really was making me think of how nuanced and confusing it can mean to get to know yourself and to connect with yourself, because we know what it means to get to know someone else, right? Like, say we go out to dinner with somebody, or we have them over, we watch TV with them, we go on a walk with them, we ask them questions, we experience our beings together. And it's almost like that feels obvious because you can physically see another human being in front of you. So if my friend comes over, it's like, yeah, my friend's coming over, we're going to talk, we're going to connect, and we're going to experience life together. But when it comes back to ourselves, like, it has been this weird thing for me of like, ooh, like, I don't want to be alone myself. That's kind of uncomfortable. That's kind of something about it. It's like, well, how do I do all that stuff? Like, get to know, the way I get to know everyone else, how do I get to know me? I now have been with myself like a lot the past few weeks, and it's felt really, really great. It's felt more familiar than not to be with myself, but I'm remembering how to get to that state is very confusing because there's a lot of resistance there. What is the resistance? Is it fear of letting go? Think of like when we're with people, we're doing all these things, we have so many things going on, like, but when you're really with yourself, like getting up, like you said, like dancing in the kitchen alone, you have to have a certain level of ease. Because if you're anxious, if you're in fear state, you're not going to want to, I've seen this myself. I'm not going to be able to let go if I'm home alone. I'm going to be scared, like anxious. I'm going to be worried about something. I'm going to be on my phone like a constricted state. My body's going to be constricted. And it's like, I don't know. I think this is such an interesting topic. Because I think the act of being with oneself or connecting with oneself, it's like, it feels so simple, but I don't think it is because of how much resistance we have normally towards ourselves.
Well, I think the first thing to know is it matters where you're starting. Like, are you starting at a point where you're just trying to not be hungover? You know what I mean? Like, you're in such a place of disconnection where, like, I think back to like my early 20s where I feel like I was in a constant cycle of trying to just not be hungover. Like, I was just in a perpetual state of being hungover is what it felt like. So that's, I would say, like the furthest direction away from, in my experience, in my life, like that's the furthest direction away from being able to like you said, like dance with yourself and love yourself, like in the kitchen, like of your home, of just being free. And, you know, so that's the furthest place from from that. So the next thing I think of is other parts of my life. Okay, being hungover, that's not a problem. Taking care of myself. That's where it gets hard because that's where it comes to mind. That's where the thought of, oh, I'm alone with my thoughts without distractions. Okay, so what other distractions can I be picking up? So it's like, this is where the caffeine thing comes in. And I felt validated by this because Tara Brach in one of her speeches was like, and when we're feeling anxious, we want to keep going. So we get coffee because we feel like if we stop and slow down, we might miss out on something. So I think to like an untrained mind who's, I'm going through the course of my life from being hungover to realize, okay, I'm not going to drink that much anymore, to now I'm in a state of, oh, it's overwhelming to be with all of this, super overwhelming. So I'm going to, look for distractions for you, maybe through dating, through other things that maybe will make me feel better about myself, because I'm not actually going into the deeper well. I'm going into the fun times, you know what I mean? And I think we can hit a certain level of the fun times to where we're like, right, there's more to life. And that's where I think we're faced with, in my experience of many years of struggling, of trying to connect with myself, trying to force affirmations, trying to force, this type of therapy is going to fix everything, or this type of working out is going to fix everything. And like for me, I feel like it was a lot of series of those. And it wasn't until recently that I really recognized that pattern. And I was listening to a podcast with Dulce Unity, and Ray was saying something of the most addictive pattern that happens is, here's a problem, I'm going to get a solution. Here's a problem, I'm going to get a solution. And like we get stuck. I got stuck so often in that cycle of, right, I'm so fixated on the solution that I'm not actually looking at the problem. And the fact is we have to look at the problem. Like we have to sit with it. And for the past 3 years, I've been super aware of the problem, but I don't even know how to go into iterations of that, of getting more close to the problem, getting more intimate with the problem. And it's really a level of just getting more intimate with yourself, getting so comfortable with yourself, of actually loving yourself. And I think for me, I've seen it happen. And I got to a place where I felt like, to a place of surrender, of, whoa, where's my life going? What's happening? What am I actually doing? And I kind of realized that I've been in this like false idea of improvement and false idea of getting better. And that's not to discount it. I think that healing is not linear, and one day we're good, one day we're off, one day we're feeling really great. But I think it's like when we can look at these like overarching larger patterns that we're in, and I think those are really pivotal moments when we can really call out ourselves of, this pattern is one that you're in right now and it's not helping you, of trying to find a solution to your problem. There is no solution to your problem. There is just sitting with the problem. There is just loving the problem. There's the learning to love and embrace the problem of whatever is not making you happy. It's realizing that there is no solution. And I think allowing yourself to love yourself, it's so deep, right? But it's a lifelong journey that we're on. So to go back to your question, Soph, I think that the resistance we feel with wanting to love ourselves, with wanting to see our most raw form of ourself. We were talking about this earlier, that there's a difference between active threat because you're in physical danger. And if we're in our home, that's likely not the case. If we're just with ourselves alone, that's likely not the case. So it's a problem of the mind, of the anxieties, of the emotions, of the fears. And, I think that's why meditation is so helpful, especially ones that help you connect with yourself, like Tara Brach, because it's giving you a resource to connect with yourself that feels difficult to just decide you're going to do it. Like how do we do it? It's like we just wake up and we're like, I'm going to deeply connect with myself. And it's like, it's not something that we can force because it's so foreign. It's so new. So I think the resistance is the unknown. It's the uncertainty. And it's also just, it's not comfortable. So the desire to want to feel deeply and open and raw has to be bigger than where you're at now. The desire to want to heal has to be strong enough to where you decide to go from where you're sitting now, how you're feeling now, to even more discomfort. But knowing that the discomfort is raw and it is real and it's true. So there is beauty in that. You don't just need to get through it. The beauty is that you're not resisting it. You're deciding to love yourself and take care of yourself. And just going back to that poem that I wrote, the whole point is that for me was that if I can identify this love in myself, then it can never be lost no matter what happens to me. And I think that is the point of healing. I think that is the point of moving from the place that you are now, despite the resistance, to go there with yourself, even though it's uncomfortable. The reward, it's living more raw, more beautifully, more authentically in ways that you haven't before.
You said so much there. I'm like, wow. Everything you're saying, I'm like, yes. And it's almost like it wasn't even the words. It's like the energy state you're embodying, which is interesting, but it acts as an anchor almost. It's like anything that's happening out external, whether you're going through a breakup, whether you're going through, the natural confusion and uncertainty of life, this sense of love and connection with being with ourselves in the fullest and really just being truly present without a state of resistance is like this anchor that I have been looking to in times of confusion. It's waking up and lying on my yoga mat and really being with myself in the experience. Like, and I have a few things I want to say. First, when you were talking about like the repetitive state of being hungover, I resonated with that so much because like that was my early 20s. And even when we first started dating, like every weekend, we would go to Soho and walk around. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I remember this feeling in my body coming up and I didn't know what it meant because frankly, I didn't know what else to do. And that's why this journey, like sometimes I think we can confuse it of like, what do I have to do to connect with myself? And it's like, while we do things, we're just deepening. For an example, say you're in your house and it's a Saturday afternoon. You wake up, you feel like I have to leave the apartment. I have to go somewhere. That used to be me most Saturdays because I just didn't know how to exist in my own home. And now as I'm reading more and more interested in things, connected to this yoga studio, it's like I feel like in those moments when we get up and we go outside and we're trying to find something, and I think we're doing this basically throughout our whole life, we're not allowing ourselves to get to know the things we like. And I think that's why I'm seeing like so much of connecting with ourselves is, what do we like? What music do we like? Where do we like to go? What cinematic films catch our eye? What is it about this book that captivates you? And the other day I was feeling a little like, I don't know, just feeling like the energy in me. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I feel like an energy shift in me has happened. To the listeners who are new or haven't been on this journey, like a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have been like, I'm angry, I'm reacting, I'm getting mad. It's Daisy's fault. Like that just shows the progression of this beautiful journey of like, you can get to a point where you're physically just like, whoa, something just changed in me. Well, I wonder why. The observer. You actually are the observer. And I experienced that. So I put on a Maggie Rogers video and I watched it. And there was something about watching the music video. It was for her new song, Don't Forget Me. And I've been listening to that song on repeat. But something about the video just brought me back to me. And I think what it really was me immersed in something. The experience of watching the music video. And I don't know if it's because she was representing things about myself. Like I really like, that she was somewhere on the East Coast and in the beautiful lakes and the trees, and she was writing and like embodying the sense of connection with herself. It's not even like anything she's doing, but that she was so connected to herself. So it was like something about seeing other people. Like I always feel this way about people, and I felt a little jealous of like, wow, their t-shirt they're wearing so cool, or those shoes they're wearing, they like something. It wasn't about the material items, but it was about that those people really were wearing those things or doing those things because they really felt connected to it. Not trying to be anyone, not trying to be anything. And this is, I think, this very nuanced thing of like, we start this journey of life looking outside of us for answers. Here's what you wear. Here's what music you listen to. Here's the friends you hang out with. Here's the job you should have. Everything we've been told. And when you see somebody like, for me, like Maggie Rogers, who the way she sings her music, it's just like, she's not doing this for money. Like, she's doing this because it is her being. It is her expressing herself. It's her purest form of presence. It's love. And I think that we like are being so beautiful. There are things that light me up that might not light you up. And it's like tapping into those things, getting to know those things. And my life used to be one that I would just wake up, go to work, eat dinner, go walk around Soho, get hungover. I didn't know how to deepen into my own life. And that's what's happening now for both of us. You start to cultivate the gardens of your inner world. Like, your inner world becomes this beautiful place you can go into. And I can't imagine what it'd mean to myself if I heard someone say, you can go into your inner world. You can cultivate the gardens of your inner world. I'd be like, what? But it's real. And it's really exciting.
Well, back on the topic of resistance, I think I've known what I've had to do for myself to connect with myself for a very long time. I've just resisted it. It's like when you wake up with the racing thoughts and you're like, how do I take care of myself? And you're like, well, for me, I'm like, oh, I'm nannying right now and I need to do these different projects. I need to do this. And it's like you make a decision in an anxious fluster. So it's like anything, what I'm doing, if I'm in that state of mind, I'm not actually doing it, right? Like, I'm not actually present. I'm not actually thinking about, well, I am thinking about it because I'm not actually present. And I feel like the last couple of weeks, I have let all of that go and just kind of regrouped and been like, nothing matters if you aren't connecting with yourself. So what I've found, things that I've resisted in the past, things like doing yoga at my own house, waking up, doing a 30-minute, 45-minute yoga. I think sometimes I want to just get outside and go because I'm so anxious. And I'm like, oh, wait. Then I start to create a story of like, oh, like the air in here, it's bad. I don't feel good. I can't breathe properly. It's like, I need some fresh air. And it's like going outside when you're fully anxious like that. For me, I look back and I'm like, no, that's not the answer. And I've been just forcing myself because I've seen how impactful it is to, do yoga and really attach your breath to your movement, really just attach to your breath. Like, that has been the biggest change in my life. I thought it was a specific lady I found on YouTube, had this specific YouTube video, but I realized I've never been doing yoga that was so slow and intentional that it allowed you to keep up with your breath, connecting to the movement. And it's more so you're just deep breathing in and out for 30 minutes. That is what has allowed me to see clearly. And I say that loosely. I allowed myself to see clearly, but that resource, being able to do that and then meditate and then go deeply within myself, right? Like, how are you going to be able to connect deeply with yourself if your body is all anxious and your nervous system's all out of whack? And like, that's been the thing that I've been up against the most with connecting with myself. If my body feels like it's being attacked, how am I going to connect with the most vulnerable parts of myself? How am I going to dance and have fun if my body feels under attack? So that's where I see breathing is such this resource that I've resisted the shit out of. I've resisted other people breathing to that extent. I've resisted hearing other people breathing, of it being a disruption to me to such an extreme level because I was so afraid to breathe myself because I would be with when you breathe deeply, you're with yourself. And even on this podcast right now, usually like in the past, I'd be like trying to catch a breath. I couldn't even breathe while talking. That just showed the state that I've been in of just pure anxiety. So I think it's such a multifaceted answer of how you connect with yourself. But I think somatically, like looking at, does your body feel safe? Your mind is another whole, they're the same thing, but on a physical level, like how do you calm your body? And that going on TikTok, you think that's what helps. But taking some deep breaths, like for 30 minutes and moving with it, I don't know. It's different for everyone, but I feel like it changed my ability to exist. It allowed me to meditate more deeply. It allowed me to be with myself more deeply. It allowed me to actually grieve and mourn and cry and come out of it and feel light and dance and happy and excited. It allowed me to say, I'm here and I'm not leaving. So
it's interesting because like before we moved, obviously we went through a massive change. So that brought up a shit ton of anxiety. Like we peeled back a giant layer of moving, leaving our jobs, facing all this shit. But there were definitely points like when I was at my job where I was living alone. I'd wake up, I was blasting like music. I was so pumped to go into the office. I was so connected to myself. And I think we go through stages in our life where we're more connected to ourselves than not. And I think what happens though is we could fall really deeply into that period of staying disconnected. Or instead of it being, I'm a little disconnected for a day, it becomes a year. It becomes 2 years. It becomes 10 years. We forget oh my God, right. This state of bliss where I feel at peace, nothing's wrong. What it is like a state of nothing's wrong. And I wonder how many people feel that in a world where there are so many external things, perceived problems, but how much we have been sitting with tough pain. Like you're saying with the whole, I just want to have fun, I just want to have fun, I just want to have fun. I remember this so much of like, it's a weekend, I want to wake up, I just want to have fun, I want to go to the farmer's market. We're trying so heavily to feel good, but what we're trying to do to feel good actually is impeding on our ability to actually feel good. I'm really seeing this big difference in my life of contentment. I used to wake up, try to stretch, couldn't do it. So anxious. I can't even stand in a yoga pose. So hearing you talk about these yoga videos you've stumbled upon, obviously I'm like, well, there's also a combination of you're much more focused now. Like going to these yoga classes now, wow, I never have actually been able to sit through a pose. Anxiety can keep us from experiencing the fruits of this life. And yeah, I just think that like, I'd say I've been in an anxious state for most of my life. And I think you would say that too. Like, wow, how does it feel to be kind of coming out of fight or flight? Like you've been operating on what, 27 years of that, 28 years?
I think yes, most of my life was like that. Obviously there was blimps where I was more relaxed. And I think of this move to Austin, stripping everything away. That's the most anxious I've ever been. And I'm looking for new therapists, as you know. And I was talking with a lady earlier and she was like, well, transitions are typically where I work with people the most because it kicks up really old stuff. It kicks it up. Things that you maybe haven't experienced before, like big changes, really bring them up, which I thought was interesting to hear her say that. It was really validating too. Like we went into this move, quitting our jobs, all this stuff. We just did it. We're like, woo, we're free. And then we thought we'd just keep doing what we were doing. And it's been the hardest, most difficult thing of my life. I can confidently say that because it's also the most aware that I've been. But that doesn't even save you enough to know what to do when you feel so stressed and anxious that you don't even know how to move. I think we are both going through that. And I think that it couldn't keep going that way. It had to break. Like the ceiling had to break because when you go through such a huge change, it kicks all that up. And you can only sit in that extremity from my experience. I could only sit in that way of living for so long, of the extreme anxiety, the extreme uncertainty of just being so caught in the mind. So I think it comes to an extent, it comes to a place where you have to make some kind of change. And that doesn't even mean like outside of you, but it means inside of you. And that's what it felt like.
So I'm thinking now, it's like, okay, we moved, brought up all this shit. And by going through all this stuff, it's brought to light all the anxiety we're experiencing, which has now in turn allowed us to deepen our relationship like with ourselves and have entered a new portal of being. Like when you look back, I'm living in New York. Did you think something was wrong? Or did you think that your base state was so normalized that you didn't know otherwise? And the reason I'm asking this, because I'm like wondering about people who are listening to this, who haven't made changes. And how do they know where they're really at? How do they see that without going through change? Because what I'm realizing is like, wow, we can all have such a deeper quality of life.
Well, yeah, I definitely question like this pushed me to the edge, this move. And it makes me wonder, like, this, wherever I'm at right now, which is a new place. I won't even like label it as what it is because I don't know what it is. It's a new experience of just a little bit more ease. And this has been 2 weeks, so we have series of our lives. So I'm not even going to try to jinx anything because it's an everyday task. You show up for yourself every single day. Every moment. No, seriously. So I wonder if I could have this if we were still in New York, if I was still in New York, because when I was in New York, I felt meh, kind of. There was still like a lot of good things that I was experiencing, but that's what prompted the change. I was just like, something's just kind of like meh. Like something's got to change, but I can't see it. I can't understand what it is. I don't know how to change my life here. I don't know what changes I need to make. I don't know. It was too comfortable. It was almost like having the comfort was really hard. But that's not to say like you can't make those big changes. That was just my experience. I think that it comes to a point like where you have to, you have to start putting yourself into new situations. And that's just not something that I really did when we were in New York. Also separately for me, like realizing we've done so much stuff together, podcast, all of this. So that was a huge part of it for me. So you don't have to move to do this. I think it's ballsy to freaking move when everything in your life is up in question. But I think it is a very effective way of emptying out your jar and having to reorganize it. But it's a lot. Like, I don't know if I would recommend it to myself. I mean, like, because it's a lot to...
You wouldn't recommend it to yourself? Look, I would never regret this decision.
No. I didn't say that right. It's been so difficult, but it's been the best thing that's ever happened to me. So do it. I recommend 100%, but be cautious. But I don't know why I'm saying that. Because it's been really hard. I'm not gonna undermine that, how hard it's been.
But it's like, if we're like, be cautious of what? Like, yeah, it's difficult, but you can't prepare for that. You can't, what do you do? Bunker up in New York? Let me sit there and get ready for the next 6 months? Like, we plunge into the unknown. I get what you're saying, but it's just like, it's funny because, yeah, it's been really hard, but that, like, you have to, you can't bypass difficulty. You can't bypass it. And that's why I think the greatest gifts of life come from those who are willing to sit through the fucking pain. You cannot bypass it. But when we try to, oh, what can I do to make this easier? No, you wouldn't be where you are now. Would you be sitting here with this insight? Maybe. It is difficulty. It is pushing through discomfort and breaking from every single ounce of comfort that you've clung to that has allowed you to get to this point. And I was going to ask, like, my mind's going to so many places. It's like, okay, wait a minute. Was everybody around me miserable? Like, was there anybody that I knew who was mindfully living, meaning actually connected to themselves in my life? I feel like I made like a friend in law school who was the closest embodiment of that. But I was so in the circle where everybody complained. Everyone was miserable. No one wanted to be doing what they're doing. So, like, did you see this, what we're going through, in anyone of peace and contentment? It makes me wonder, whoa, like, I wonder if how many people I even know who have gotten to know themselves. Is that a rare thing? I think another big thing, we've had so much time. We left our jobs. So to someone who has a job, okay? 9 to 5 job, 9 to 6 job, 9 to 7 job. Your time is the most valuable asset. It's a lot more limited. What tips of advice would we give to someone who, I guess I can look back to myself of like, I was working all those hours at my job. And I guess I just started to slow down, started to meditate. But yeah, my question was like, going in circles, was like, did you see anyone in your life who reflected this to you? That might have indicated to you of, oh, wow. And I guess maybe getting into our relationship was a big one.
Oh, man. So I look back and yeah, of course, like throughout like all of my time in New York, whether it was like, I remember at a particular job I had a particular manager. She was a few years older than me. And she was just definitely in this journey. She was definitely in it. I feel like at the first job I worked at, like people were pretty aware of this. I don't know if it was because it was an advertising agency where there was just a lot of diversity. There was a lot of diversity at the company I worked with, a lot of cultural diversity. So that gave me a good window out of, a quote unquote circle that comes from all the exact same places. So I definitely saw like so many different ways to live. And I'm still connected with a lot of people that I worked with, and they're all doing very interesting things on LinkedIn, like non-traditional things, I should say. So that was kind of like my entry point into New York. And I think I wasn't ready for it. And like, that's why I veered off, and I ended up veering to this place of vanilla, of where everyone kind of was doing the same thing. And that was a representation of where I was at, of what I was attracted to, of comfort, of safety. I don't know, but to answer your question, like I definitely saw people, not that I was necessarily close with outside of a work sense, but I think it's also a representation of being really consumed by your life. Like the circle you were in, all the friends you were in, super consumed by that. Because in New York, you can see some interaction happen on the street. That's beautiful. Like there's so many people, like you can really be present. And I wonder what it would be like to live in New York now, because there's definitely all of that there. We just had a wonderful conversation with the founder of Storytell, a beautiful event in New York City where people go and they share stories as a way to connect with each other. We really learned to, and I'll speak for myself, I've really learned to embody this more being in Austin. I didn't embody this in New York City. And I think you get drawn to what you embody. People are attracted to you as to what you embody. And moving to Austin really pushed me to this place of stripping me and relying more so on these modalities and resources that have actually grounded the shit out of me, that I've resisted so much in the past. But I was pushed to an edge where I was like, these things are what I need right now. But it actually had an impact on me of grounding me so much. It's a really nuanced thing. I could keep going because there's also the level of you gave yourself and I gave myself permission to see myself differently by people in Austin, because for the first time you were able and I was able to perceive myself differently because everything was foreign. I kind of had to re-perceive myself in a new way.
Whoa, give other people the permission to view you differently. Like moving cities, really, it's like you can do all this in the city you're living, sure. I mean, you can, yeah, definitely you can. I didn't even, but if for us, like, I didn't want to be in New York, so I don't even know it's about the city. I think it's just about the act of, say you're at a job right now, say you work in marketing, and you really want to start going, say you live in New York City, say you live in Manhattan, say you're like, I really want to start going to Brooklyn more and explore a different music scene. Like, so much of this deepening of our deeper well of our inner being, of getting to know ourselves, it doesn't have to do with our career. I mean, for us it does, which is amazing and beautiful, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But for having a well-rounded life, I think, like, to that example, like, I think it's about really immersing yourself in new stuff and giving yourself permission. I think of how much, for me, like my sexuality, how much I judge myself of, I want to start being around other people in Brooklyn. Like, Brooklyn to me was like the representation of like different. Oh, you're wearing that. Even the embodiment of what I wear now is just much more aligned with what I actually want to wear. And a lot of that came back to like, okay, early 20s, being around people trying to fit in and the office. And I'm not really sure what I'm saying. I guess it's just like,
no, you're making sense. You're talking about the different levels that you've been able to connect with yourself and the deeper well that you're able to go into on this journey. And I think you're just reflecting back to your early 20s. So that was your experience of being in that job and it being everything, and you putting all of your energy, it seems like, into that and beginning to understand yourself outside of that career, outside of that life that you were living. You started to question it. And I think that's a natural thing to do, because there's several people who are still living that life that you began this journey on. It's easy to forget that. There's so many people who are still in that life trying to explore something new. So I think it is important to reference it. It is really important because there's people who will find this helpful in that regard. who are validated or who are seen, because that is their experience. And I can remember back to being in that place, because also for me, like moving to New York, like that was a pretty big life change. Like I was starting a new job. I was leaving college. I just moved. But I would look for podcasts just to like look for people who were going through my experience so I could have it validated. I look back and I was like, wow, I was too afraid to even go to events in person to be validated. I was looking for them for podcasts. And I think that's the biggest thing, is it's all about how we perceive ourselves.
But it's almost like you don't know of all the things that are out there. Like there are so many things that you live in a city or a town. Like there are so many things. I mean, I'll talk about cities. I don't know about towns. There's so many things out there, or online communities. Like it's easy to sit there and be like, oh, like my life sucks. But again, taking action. We have to be the ones, like how I'm changing my relationship with working out and exercising. But it comes to a point where I think at first taking action feels uncomfortable and taking action feels scary. But then you reach a point where last night I'm sitting here reading this book. I'm flying through the book. I'm like, wow, I can finally read books again. All the books I haven't finished. Like I finally found a book I like. It takes trying on different things to figure out what it is that you like.
It's not about finding a solution to the problem. And I think when we're trying to make a change or we're trying to connect with ourselves, it's out of that anxious need to find a solution to the problem. So I think on this topic of deepening your connection with yourself, there's no rush. If you're trying to make a change, don't think about what it's going to look like for you once you make that change, or what you're going to get once you solve the problem. Think about what is your experience right now, and are you showing up for yourself right now? Are you coming back to yourself right now? Are you embodying yourself right now? Because that's what's important. I think so often we try to make these changes out of a disconnected place. And I think if we can shift that goal to say, I just want to be connected with myself right now. I'm not so focused on an outcome. Even if I can't be connected with myself right now, what's something that will help me slow down or enjoy the moment? And I think if we're able to follow that on a day-by-day basis, we'll look back at our single year of doing that, and you'll make so much change without having intentionally done it, because our life is made up of moments. And if we're actually showing up for ourselves in each moment, we're going to learn to connect with ourselves. We're going to learn to really be there for ourselves. And if we're doing that, then we're naturally going to gravitate towards doing things out of a whole complete place of excitement, as opposed to looking for an event out of anxiety of I need this to fix me.
Exactly. And that's why my life now has naturally changed its course without me even again, these decisions haven't come through the mind of connecting with myself and my life shifting and having more interest and having new friends. When you're more relaxed and more connected and operating at a state of true relaxation and not fear and not anxiety, your life just will switch. And like you said, Daisy, you're not even going in there with the intention anymore to I need to go connect to myself so I can feel better. You're slowed down. So everything you're doing now is you. Everything you're doing, it makes me wonder, is it even about the things you're doing? I mean, it is, you have interest, but it's the state in which you're experiencing life. Every conversation you're going to be having will be more relaxed. Every meal you have will be more mindful. Every interaction with your partner, with your friends will feel more connected. It's a holistic, like Rick Rubin's saying in this book, creativity isn't a singular act. It's the holistic, full circle, your life will feel, I think so much of the things I felt in New York is maybe one part of the pie chart was filled, but you'll fill the whole thing up. There won't be one part of your life that feels empty, because ultimately emptiness came from the state in which your being was in. You will completely transcend the state of your being. You will just be a different, I don't want to say person, you will have completely new perspectives. And that's in a really, really exciting place to be in. I feel wow, holy shit, I'm really seeing how much we have both changed our lives. And it's profound. It's inspiring. We moved. This has been so hard. And now I'm here feeling like yesterday I was walking outside of like, I feel like I'm on cloud 9. Like, holy shit.
I'm definitely leaving this conversation questioning and confused more so than when I entered it, but out of a connected place, out of a what's going on? But that's okay. It's not out of fear and anxiety. It's out of I'm okay not knowing because I'm at peace not knowing. And I feel good about that because that feels new. And I have this moment with that mentality, and it's really cool. So this has been a great convo. It's been a good convo. Feel connected to myself, feel connected to you, feel connected to the listeners, and didn't expect this. And it was cool I started with my poetry because that's something that I've been nervous about, but it's something I feel really strong and passionate about. So it feels cool to share it on here with people. And I will say that
Hell yeah, look at you expressing yourself. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Thanks. And I'll say I post it on my Instagram. I post it on our Substack and our newsletters. So if you want to catch more of that, follow me at daisy.express on Instagram. And thanks for listening. And we'll see you on Thursday.
You guys should have saw Daisy's smile as she just told you to follow her on Instagram because that's awesome. So definitely check out her page. Her poetry is beautiful. Even as her partner. Doesn't matter because it doesn't matter if you're someone's partner. You can still see them and all the beauty that they have if you're present and relaxed. So thank you so much for listening. What an awesome conversation. We will talk to you on Thursday. Bye.